So the Rugby World Cup is only a couple days away, and the Fijians, they have had massive injury news, which we will be breaking down in this video alongside a preview for how we feel they will go throughout the Rugby World Cup. But that will include looking through at their squad, their upcoming schedule in the World Cup, as well as the previous fixtures and a prediction to close out the video. But we will jump straight into it, their squad. Now there is one player in this squad that is now going to be taken out and replaced, that being Caleb Muntz. Unfortunately suffered a knee injury, which is a massive shame for the Fijians. So he's been playing very well at 10 and was one of the keys, I feel, not just off the kicking tee, but also just that playmaker role starting at the 10. So the coaches haven't confirmed who will be the replacement, but more than likely it makes sense that it would be Ben Volavola. But looking through at this Fijian squad, starting first of all with the loose hair props, they have gone with 3 for the Flying Fijians: Aroni Maui, Penny Ravai, and also Hone Koroi Dua. So pretty strong in the front row department. Quite a bit of experience there under the belt. 2 of these 3 did play in the last Rugby World Cup. Looking at the hookers, it is Tavita Ikanaveri, Sam Matavesi, as well as Real Togi Otama. So more than likely they will switch between Tavita Ikanaveri and Sam Matavesi as the main 2 hookers, and then they've still got Zariel Togi Otama as the backup, who may get a little bit more game time in a couple of those games up against slightly easier opposition. But as we know for Pool C, every game is crucial with how close it could be. So they will have to manage the squad very well, Fiji, making sure they are using players at the right times, as well as getting that points differential up with such a close pool. Then looking at the tight hair props, they have got Masaki Donge, Luke Tangi, and Samu Tawake. The locks, it will be Asoana Sila, Timo Maiana Vanua, Te Ehuaru Threkadavita, and then also another man who can play lock, but also counts as a loose forward. It is Albert Tuisui, and I have no idea where they're going to play him yet, because they have played him at lock throughout the Pacific Nations Cup. He can also play 6, he can play 8, so in other words, he's a very handy player to have in a squad going into a Rugby World Cup. But the rest of the loose forwards, Lakima Tangi Valu, I felt he played absolutely brilliantly in the game up against the English. Lavani Botia, huge amount of experience for him, can play in the 4-pack, but also actually offers a little bit of cover at inside centre. We've seen him do it for La Rochelle. I wouldn't be surprised if the Fijians do that same tactic, although saying that, they've got a huge amount of backs that could certainly fill that gap as well. Valive Mira, Meri Dirialangi, and also Viliami Mata. So a very strong 4-pack for the Fijians. They will be working on that physicality up front. It was something that worked phenomenally up against England, and they will be looking to cause some upsets just like that throughout Pool C. Looking through at the back line, Frank Lamani, Semi Kuravoli, and also Penny Matawalu. Now there's been quite a big debate at the moment between whether it's going to be Frank Lamani starting in the big games, or maybe they go with Semi Kuravoli. I personally would go with Kuravoli, have Lamani coming off the bench with that late experience as well as that X factor that he offers. But I feel that Kuravoli's form overall throughout the Pacific Nations Cup has been just that little bit stronger. So that is why I would go with him there. Then we move on to the fly halves. Now this is where it will get interesting for the Fijians, because I believe a lot of their tactics would have been based around having this man at number 10, Caleb Muntz. Sadly, due to his knee injury, and you got to feel for the youngster because he has had quite an impressive build-up towards this Rugby World Cup. He's been playing well for the Fijian drill, which then earned him this opportunity. The fact that they left out Ben Volavola initially from the Rugby World Cup squad meant that there was a lot of pressure on this man's shoulders, but it looked like he was going to be able to handle it nicely. But sadly, the knee is the thing that stops him from going to this World Cup. So instead, like I mentioned, they will bring in another player, and that more than likely will be Ben Volavola. Tite Teller, the other fly half, and for now I believe he will be the man starting at number 10 in the opening game that the Fijians have got for themselves, which will be up against Wales. Looking through at the rest of the backs, Joshua Tuisova, man who had a little bit of an injury near the end of the Pacific Nations Cup, but I believe he should be match fit. Semi Radradra, Waisia Naiathalevu, 2 brilliant players in any league that they play in around the world. Radradra, whether he's coming off the bench or in the starting side, will give you a massive impact. Waisia Naiathalevu probably going to be captain for a few of the Rugby World Cup matches. Going to be very tough to decide who they go with as their midfield combination. But personally, I would probably go with those 2. Radradra at inside centre, Waisia Naiathalevu on the outside. Or Sefo Masi, another option that they could use at outside centre, scored a massive amount of tries for the Fijian draw. In fact, the most by an individual in Fijian draw history, although that is a very short history, of course. Only the 2 years under their belt. Celestino Ravatamunda, the man of the match in the game up against England, was absolutely phenomenal. Managed to make a whole heap of meters, helping his side towards that try line. Wouldn't be surprised if he scores quite a few tries throughout this Rugby World Cup. Vinaya Habosi, same boat for that man. Jita Wainanyolo, who we didn't get to see in that game up against England. Kalaveti Ravovo, Sareli Mingwala, and then also Eliza Druasisi, the two fullback covers, although they do also have the option of transitioning Ravatamunda to move into 15 rather than out on the wing. But that is the Fijian squad. Now we move on to looking at their fixtures, when they are taking place, and who they will be up against. So they are a part of Pool C, like I mentioned just a little bit earlier on, alongside Wales, Australia, Georgia, and Portugal. So their opening game will be up against the Welsh. That is taking place at 7 a.m. New Zealand time on Monday the 11th of September. So I believe that will be a 7 a.m. kickoff in Fiji also. Should be a very entertaining game and a very important game for both of these sides heading into this Rugby World Cup. It is definitely important to start off the competition with a win, even more so when you are in a close group. Their second game will be up against the Australians. That is taking place at 3:45 a.m. New Zealand time on Monday the 18th of September, and that once again is going to be a tricky game. Probably the two hardest games for Fiji, going back to back at the start up against the Welsh and the Australians. The next game after that is on the 1st of October on the Sunday morning, so they actually have a rest week in between these two matches. But when they are back, they're going head to head with the Georgians. That is at 4:45 a.m. And then the last game that they have got of the group stage, it is up against Portugal, 9th of October on the Monday, taking place at 8 a.m. And I believe the reason that that is a little bit later alongside that game the week prior up against Georgia is because of New Zealand daylight savings time. So I'm not sure whether or not that does translate exactly with the time in Fiji, but it will be somewhere very close to that same time. But looking through now at previous fixtures, we could talk about the Pacific Nations Cup and how successful the Fijians were in it, but I believe the games that we should be looking at just that little bit more for now, seeing as we are closer to that Rugby World Cup, are the Rugby World Cup warm-up matches. They have one up against France. They were defeated 34 points to 17, but we saw a lot of heart and a lot of grit shown by the Flying Fijians throughout that game. They just couldn't quite get themselves over the try line enough, but they still had some magical moments throughout that fixture, but none as magical as their next contest. They did get themselves the victory over the English, 30 points to 22. It was a historic victory. The Fijians, they played as a unit and they played an extremely strong game of rugby, which I think made all of the other sides in Pool C just that little bit more nervous after seeing how well the Fijians did for themselves throughout that game. But now we are up to that stage of the video where we try and give a prediction of how far we feel Fiji will go in this Rugby World Cup. Now, we have actually done a prediction video already where we predicted every single game of the Rugby World Cup, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. But for this World Cup, I believe Fiji, they will be able to get out of that group stage. I'm a little bit more hesitant now due to the fact that they have lost Caleb Muntz, but I still feel they will be strong enough to be able to get out of that group. Then in my quarterfinals, the way that it did set up, I actually had them going up against England, so it would be a rematch of what we did see not too long ago. But I actually think in that next game, with it being a quarterfinal in the Rugby World Cup, if England can get out of their group somehow intact, I think they'll be able to build just that little bit more momentum. So that is why I'm saying Fiji, they will get to the quarterfinals, which first of all would be a massive achievement, and who knows, maybe they can make it further. But I think the big thing here for the Fijians is to get out of that group, because once you get past that hurdle, there's only 3 more to go. And imagine the elation if the Fijians could somehow make it to the semi-finals, or maybe even the finals. Of course, at this stage, though, it is all just predictions. But the World Cup, with it being just around the corner, we are soon to find out. But I do thank you all very much for tuning in to this preview video. Do let me know in the comments who you feel will be a key player for Fiji throughout this Rugby World Cup competition, as well as how far you feel the Fijians will go throughout this Rugby World Cup. But throughout the competition, we will be doing previews, reviews, also doing the lineups for the Fijians alongside the live commentary of every single one of their matches. So be sure, if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. But thank you all very much for tuning in. I will see you all for the next one.